This video is going to be my reaction, albeit a delayed one, to the Lions' choice or choices, that is, with regards to Marcus Davenport and Zadarius Smith. Releasing Zadarius Smith, guy who was productive last year in Detroit, ended up with 9 total sacks, splitting time between the Lions and Cleveland, and then Marcus Davenport, who only was able to play in 2 games after coming over as a free agent signing last year for $6 million. It sounds like the money that was built into Zadarius Smith's contract clearly came into play because during his short time, like I said, I thought he showed all the toughness, the team-oriented approach, and the durability that the Lions, that this staff really wants, that Dan Campbell really wants, I guess, with new offensive and defensive coordinators. But up until a couple of days ago in our Lions Discord, I had even typed that I thought a defensive end group comprised of Aiden Hutchinson, Zadarius Smith, some second or third round draft pick like a Braden Swinson, or even a first round guy like a Nick Scourton, along with Marcus Davenport, was a good starting point. Wish they could bring Muhammad back. He played well. I think he was a UDFA guy. He's now an unrestricted free agent. That would seem like a good group to me. And then all of a sudden this weekend it kind of went haywire. Brad Holmes and the front office clearly decided that the monetary commitment to Zadarius Smith was too great. Now, I do suspect that if it was just salary for 2025, meaning you show up and play in 2025 and we pay your salary, then he would still be in Detroit. He was productive. I think he can still play. At least the film looked like it to me. You're welcome to let me know if you disagree or agree in the comments section. Then he would have been here, even at age 33. But it wasn't meant to be, which kind of shocked me. But the contract, I'm sure others had looked ahead at the contract when he was acquired initially. Apparently, he was due to be given a certain amount of money if he was on the roster at a particular date. Think like $2.8 million, 2.5, something like that. Lions are going in another direction at this time. Look, I trust Brad Holmes and the guys in the front office. The only caveat that I will mention is Zadarius Smith's durability. And so I'm not really trying to draw a distinction between him and Davenport here. We all know Davenport only played 2 games last year, only played, I think, 4 the season before in Minnesota. The fear or the worry in bringing him over last year, him being Davenport, it ended up coming true, right? And the shame of it is he was playing well in the 2 games that we saw him. He missed game 2, played downhill against the Rams in week 1. Now, that O-line was overmatched at some points, but it gave you an indication of what he could do. Big, physical guy, very rugged and tough. But at this point, he really can't be relied upon, hence the low salary figure that Brad Holmes and was able to bring him in for. I think $3.85 million, something like that, maybe $4.25, whatever it is. The opposite, the other end of that spectrum, is Zadarius Smith. He's durable. I don't recall what game it was. Perhaps some of you will in the comment sections, so feel free to let me know. He got hurt twice in the second half and kept coming back in. There was like even one point where he went out the second time, and the announcers let us know there was an injury concern with him. And then all of a sudden he's back in there like 4 plays later. I think he even ended up getting a sack in that game. If memory serves, it was the Green Bay game at home, the 34-31 win. I may be wrong. But in any case, look, other than one season, Zadarius Smith has played in 16 or 17 games every year dating back to 2018. That would be, if I was a person in the room, that would have been the one thing I would have noted or mentioned that might have at least been a factor in the decision for me. Or given the team, the front office pause. As a result of, or related to, I should say, the unreal amount of injuries suffered by the Lions defense in 2024. Zadarius Smith is a guy that's, he's going to suit up every week at minimum. And I hope that was at least something that was brought up, the salary number and the dead cap money, I guess, moving forward. Clearly the main factor, at least for me. I have no idea, obviously the discussions that were made there. I wish we could see him in Detroit in 2025, have him be, part of the formula. Would have been a good situation if you ask me. Him, Hutchinson, Pascal, who I didn't mention earlier, whoever they bring in the draft, and then free agency as well. But they freed up $5.7 million in cap space. So they now, I believe, if my numbers are correct, I looked at 2 different sites over 50 million in cap space. Would have loved to have seen him and CD3 return. Who knows what's going to happen with Carlton Davis the third? I thought he had a nasty season, especially the last 6 or 8 games. Just played at a really high level. Anyway, the Davenport thing. It's easy to be negative about this. You see his stats on the screen. Lack of games played in the last 2 seasons, and in 2022, lack of sacks, period. Only played 6 games in the last 2 seasons. There is some good film of him, right? The problem is it's few and far between, so you can't really call this a film study video. Week 1 against the Rams last year, and then the previous season with the Vikings, there was 2 games in particular, the Chiefs and the Panthers. I remember scouting or studying when he signed with the Lions. There was pretty high-level stuff. Clearly, he's not being looked at as a volume starter here for 2025. The Lions need more, and we all know that. I'm quite sure that Brad Holmes and the front office have either a free agent signing in place or someone that they're targeting in the draft to augment or supplement the position, or maybe even start opposite of an Aiden Hutchinson. I will get to a few of those guys actually in the moment, 3 of them that I like in particular. But back to Davenport. Clearly looks like a 4th or 5th D end for this team, for this roster, behind Hutchinson, whoever else they bring in, Pascal. I wish Muhammad was involved. Like I said, he's a UFA guy, 1-year contract. I thought he looked solid for what he was asked to do. I really think that they should maybe double dip here at D end and outside linebacker. And what I mean is look for one guy in free agency and then someone in the draft. Let me be a little positive, or perhaps offer a word of caution or encouragement maybe for Davenport, or about Davenport, for you Lions fans. Just to detail you someone that you may have awareness of, different team, different level of player clearly, but a similar situation. The Ravens just re-signed their left tackle, Ronnie Stanley, this weekend. A huge deal for the offense. A huge deal for him personally, $60 million, $44 guaranteed. But the offensive line for the Ravens, he stabilizes that line. He went through, in case you don't know, 3 years of really terrible injuries, mostly related to an ankle that was broken in 2020. I think in a very weird situation against the Steelers. He was out for the rest of that year, 2020. Fought his way back and started in week 1 for Baltimore against the Raiders. Played not very well in week 1. And then was out for the remainder of the year. Does that sound familiar to you? It's essentially the same thing that happened to Davenport last year. And I don't think that Stanley and Davenport are anywhere near the same level of player. But it took even more time than that. Stanley returns in 2022, not until week 5. Played well, but not to his pre-injury level. In 2023, 2 seasons ago, the Ravens' unbelievable 13-4 season where they made it to the AFC Championship game, Stanley really didn't return to full health even then. He had difficulty anchoring, particularly against bull rushes. I would say played in many ways below his 2022 level. You're talking about an injury that occurred in 2020. Then last year, 2024, he makes the Pro Bowl, earns the 3-year, $20 million contract. Do I think that Marcus Davenport is headed towards that type of outcome? No, I don't. But if the Lions can limit his exposure as the 4th or 5th defensive end, get some of that physical type of play from him, maybe they can take advantage of the gifts that are still there, the physical gifts that were on display in week 1 of 2024 and then week 3 before his unfortunate injury. Look, it's also very possible, I guess some would say likely, he gets hurt and we don't hear from him again in Detroit, or really, for that matter, anywhere else in the NFL. I would almost want to say that this helps spread Holmes in the draft, because maybe they can take more of a 3-4 OLB guy, a Mike Green. But the lack of durability for Davenport, it's difficult or almost impossible to even say that. Detroit's shown confidence, faith, unwavering faith before in a guy who suffered injuries for consecutive years, Emmanuel Mosley. I get it, though. It's fashionable to criticize or decry this decision, especially with Zadarius Smith being released. So I understand that that's difficult to have a positive slant on it. That was my attempt to do so. To me, this is a hint, though, with Zadarius Smith being gone and Davenport being brought back, that something else is in the works. As an aside here, I want to continue to inform, or at least make people aware, self-promote a little bit. Something that I'm in the middle of doing. This is a massive pre-draft workflow for me. I'm just showing you. I'm not showing the film. I'm just showing you a shared drive, shared document that is available for anyone in my Patreon, and I'll try to make available prior to the draft to allow people to see film on their own, number one, but also view some of my evaluations, like you see here, for Darian Porter, 6'4" corner who runs a 4.3 out of Iowa State. So my goal is to get a top 100 evaluations done. Maybe it's not the exact top 100 players, and I think at this point we're at 58 or 60. I don't even know if we'll get to 100 for real, but we are attempting to get as much film broken down for all of these prospects that you see on screen so that I have some working knowledge. It's a tremendous uphill climb. It's a labor of love, though. It's a lot of fun. And if you have any interest in getting access to the shared folder, then join my Patreon, number one. Number two, or just ask me in a comment to share it with you. I will remove the access once the final version is completed and I can share on social media for a very small fee, maybe $2 or $3. But anyone who's in my Patreon will get access to it anyway. And in fact, if you're in the Patreon, you already get access to it essentially through the Discord where I share the exact plays and descriptions. But in any case, in a couple of weeks, it's going to be close whether I can finish it. In a couple of weeks, I'll begin to share that. If you have any suggestions on players, please let me know. The ones you see here in blue are ones where the plays are linked to and can be viewed. But in any case, on the subject of the draft, the Zadarius Smith release kind of caught me off guard somewhat, not from a salary standpoint, but just from a depth standpoint. Is there free agents available? Yeah, I mean, Joey Bosa, but with that injury history, I think that Detroit would avoid that. Khalil Mack, I could see that one, even though I think he's 34. I believe Matt Judon is a free agent. I might be wrong there. Those are all guys around the 10-year mark or more. Bosa's injury history probably is a deterrent. Mack, very durable. In case you don't know, he's played in 16 or 17 games every season in his career, except for one when he played in 17 games or 7 games. Excuse me. So Khalil Mack would be a guy that I think they might be interested in if they think he's got anything left. I didn't think he looked like the same guy on film against the Ravens this year when they went to LA and got a win. Still be a very good signing if he was paired with one of the three guys that I'll talk about here in a moment on the draft. The Lions draft impact of the Zadarius Smith being gone and Marcus Davenport being re-signed or brought back, given his injury history. How much does his lack of availability, mean you got to double up? I think they should. I think they should double dip. One free agent, one draft pick, or 2 draft picks. I'd like to get into the discussion of 3 guys that I have evaluations on so far, and I'll give you some comments. Again, all of this is available on my Patreon, the shared document / shared drive that I just showed you. I didn't show you the film. You would click on the plays that are labeled as such you saw a moment ago, and then the plays would pop up for you, available for download. So let me get to 3 guys I think they should be considering. Mike Green, Nick Scourton, and Braden Swinson from LSU. Of the 3, the one that looks like a lion the most to me is Scourton. Defensive end guy. It's hard to project. Sometimes you get guys that play D-end and they play, quote, OLB. The difference is D-end in a 3-point stance, outside linebacker in a 2-point stance. That's a simplistic difference. It's not hard-coded whereby all defensive ends are in a 3-point stance, but it's just a general rule. I think at some point, too, this draft is interesting with the edge defender depth there. Abdul Carter, Jalen Walker. I don't think that Jihaad Muhammad is. I don't think he's a outside linebacker from Alabama. I think that's an inside linebacker who occasionally walks up and plays on the edge. That he doesn't look like a career outside linebacker to me. Scourton, more of a D end, the type of player that Detroit has wanted for the last 3 or 4 years. Green is just a very polished, sharp, pass rushing outside linebacker specialist who I think is underrated against the run also. He's very explosive in taking on blocks. And what I mean by that is like kick out blocks. Talk about Mike Green. I think he will prove to be better against the run than many are giving him credit for. It may not happen immediately in his first season, but very strong, explosive, powerful player who I think is better against the run than he's receiving credit for. Scourton only had 5 sacks last year, so it doesn't stack up to what Green was able to produce last year at Marshall. I think either of those guys will be amazing in round one. Swinson, very smart, experienced, good at getting pressure, consistent pressure, I should say. I think he ended up with 8 sacks in 2024 at LSU. Swinson's a very good prospect who when I talk about players, whether it's a good pick, a great pick, whatever, I often have to couch it a little bit with where was the selection made. And so I'm going to do that with Braden Swinson. I think he'd be a very good pick in round 2 for the Lions. But if he was someone who managed to still be on the board at 101, which I don't see occurring, it would be an absolute home run choice at that time. Me, personally, I think that he doesn't get past like 80, 85, maybe 90, but to me, he just looks too talented. Then you start to have to really talk about if a guy like Braden Swinson can get to 101, this draft probably has more depth and more talent than people are giving it credit for. In any case, very diverse pass rush. Green is probably a little bit more powerful in some ways. I think Swinson would fit into a group with Hutchinson, a free agent signing of some sort, Pascal, Davenport down there as well, creating a really good group for the Lions. They clearly have to replace CD3 at some point, so that's a factor here when you're talking about Green or Scourton, if they were available, which I don't think Green will be. Because CD3 played so well, that's a huge loss. I think it has to be asked, which scenario would you prefer the most? Meaning, you either get a Green or a Scourton in the first round, or a Swinson in the third round, maybe second, more likely if you ask me, and then sign some free agent. It's a little bit tough to project where some of these guys will go beyond like Scourton and such. Because my suspicion is a guy like Swinson, there's a team out there that looks at him and says, hey, he won't be there in the third. We need to take him in the second, which is essentially the point I'm trying to make. I would compare him in many ways to like Renardo Green last year, drafted by the 49ers in round 2, knew that he would not, the 49ers knew he would not be there in round 3, so they picked him up, and lo and behold, he had a great rookie season for them. If you got out of this with a Khalil Mack type signing and then drafting a guy like Swinson or Josiah Stewart from Michigan, and you combine those guys with Hutchinson and Pascal, would you be satisfied with that? Would that be enough? Or would you prefer the phenom in round 1, Mike Green? I don't see them trading up again to get a Mike Green type like they did last year with Terrion Arnold, I should say. I'm leaning more towards them doubling up. One free agent and then a selection in the second or the third round. There's a lot of depth there, in my opinion. Outside linebacker, they don't necessarily have to go there in round 1. You may see a corner taken again in round 1. Who knows? I think they've just got to build defensive depth, and that's probably reactionary from the 2024 debacle or catastrophe, really. I could not blame Brad Holmes for overreacting on the defensive side and just grabbing as much depth, talented depth as possible to offer Shepard in his first year as a defensive coordinator. Truly, first of all, unfortunate and unfathomable what happened with Detroit's defense in 2024. Coached so well early in the season and so productive and tough and gritty, and things just fell apart in the end because of really a lack of talent and a lack of depth, which created a lack of talent, whereby the players you had on the field really weren't even names that we talked about leading up to the beginning of the 2024 season. This is my discussion of my reaction to them signing Davenport, releasing Zadarius Smith. Still a little bit surprising or shocking to hear myself utter those words. If you enjoyed it, please let me know in the comment section, number 1. Number 2, if you have any interest in either gaining access to that share drive / shared draft document, please let me know in the comment section. If you'd like to help me break down some of the film, more than welcome to do that as well, because like I said, it is a labor of love, but it's a mountain of work to try to get through, and still just a little bit over halfway there. Definitely lagging behind my own timeline, finish line, if you will, that I wanted of March 15th. Finally, if you think other Lions fans would enjoy this commentary, no film attached at all, to the front office decision and how decisions, I should say, and how that flows into free agency and then the draft, or maybe gives us a hint as to what Brad Holmes and those guys are going to do. If you think other Lions fans would enjoy that type of discussion, then please consider grabbing a link to this video, sharing it out on social media to help this content get more reach.